It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. My guest is Anthony Oliveira again for the third time. I got to point out that he's got the hat, which is American Multi-Ply. I should say single-ply because he just did a single-ply meet, so it's a little bit deceiving here. Just broke the all-time single-ply squat record, and I don't want to get my numbers mixed up here because I got WPO and the last meet you just did. It was a 98-pound total on your PR single-ply.
Yes.
Right, 1074, 600, 727, and a 2402.
Yes, sir.
All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is you did the WPO, and that was like October, November, something like that,
November.
In the fall, and squatted 1102, 606, 744 for 2452. So you have a carryover of 50 pounds from single ply to multi-ply. Yeah. So what's up with that?
So, well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I narrowed my search down to 3 different companies, all made nice equipment. All had nice accessories, but by far and away, elitefts had the best customer service. And honestly, the best prices too. There were a few things that I wanted for this facility that weren't already being done by elitefts. And when I asked Matt, I said, would you be able to do this? He said, not a problem. I will make any piece you want, any dimension you want, any color we want, even if it's not already in your catalog. So once he said that, was able to follow through on that and give us a very high quality product on time at a price that was better than any of their competitors. It was a no-brainer for me.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, so I don't know. I was really banged up for that WPO. I had an avulsion fracture in my elbow, tore my tricep. I couldn't really, the first time I was under a straight bar squatting was 3 weeks before the meet.
Okay.
So we had no idea how that meet was going to go. I had one doctor tell me that the tricep was 50% torn, and I had another doctor tell me that doctor was full of shit. So I had no idea what was going on with that. I was just trying to survive. I couldn't open my hand to deadlift, and then I also didn't want to go double overhand to, and then be bending my arm and blow my bicep off or something stupid. Yeah. So my training for that was really kind of fucked. Mm-hmm. I ended up having a pretty good meet though, because the training it just ended up lining up. But yeah, I think the major difference or why it's so close was because I benched basically the same. Mm-hmm. The overkill shirt, I'm working with Rudy now, and that made a big difference. And then also just brought my stance in a little bit. And I don't know, man, it was pretty close. We were looking at it in training, and I was like, I might be able to basically do exactly what I did at the WPO in single ply. I just ended up being out of gas at the end. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the WPO total really showed what I was capable of strength wise at that time. Yeah. Because we were really conservative with my bench. I think I opened with 560. And then we went 580, then 600. And the 600, I probably had another 20 pounds. And then my deadlift, I only pulled 744 at that meet. And I went to an all-time PR 777. And I'm coming, and it gets to my knees and whatever. And I'm like, fuck. I'm coming off the platform, and Val, my wife, grabbed my belt. And she was like, is this how you just wore this? I forgot to do my belt, which is I've never done that before. It's so funny. I did it one time in that training cycle. Mm-hmm. And I guess one of my training partners saw me when I took my big air. They saw that it was unlatched or whatever. And they didn't want to be like, hey, your belt, and mm-hmm. fuck me all up. So I think I may have been able to pull that, which would have pushed the total. Yeah. But yeah, I also just happened to have a really fucking good meet on the single ply day.
So how long did it take you, or how did you get reacclimated to the single ply gear?
Well, so yeah, it's kind of funny. Because I broke that record before. Yeah. It was 10:35 Henry Thomason, and I went 10:36.2, and that I did with basically no prep. I got the gear, I squatted twice in it, I put the bench shirt on once, and went to the meet. I never even touched the weight that I squat. Mm-hmm. I opened with 980 and then went to 1036. So that was a no prep. It was just I figured I could do it. This one, I had a little more time, and it was more so single ply stuff is scary, dude. You feel like you have nothing in the bottom. So I don't think I took a squat to depth in training the whole time because I was just like freaked out about it. And I've had some like groin stuff going on. It wasn't much of a transition form wise. It was more like,
So you didn't have to sit back more at all?
I did not. I honestly felt like the way that that suit is built, it kind of like put me there. Like it kind of had like we were talking about the seam that goes across the glutes, and that kind of gave me like some feedback. But it also, I don't know how the legs are, maybe just like I immediately broke at the hips and kind of sat down. I didn't really have to change much. The biggest thing was like my loading in training is what I had to change instead of like small things. So instead of doing like 8 triples, I would maybe do 6 for squats because I just found I was getting way more beat up in like my hips, which is usually not a problem for me.
Muscular wise or joint wise?
Muscular. Like I mean, I guess it's kind of hard. It just felt like shit. And I was getting that thing where like your hip flexors are locked up. So your legs are kind of going numb when you're sleeping and all this stuff. And I wasn't really sure, so I just tried to do the least effective dose. So I would just be like, what do I have to do today to get the stimulus to get me prepared for the meet? And like we were talking before, it's like, I was trying to basically do the same thing, right? Because initially I was going to try squat 11 at the single-ply meet. It would have been like the 3rd biggest squat ever in single-ply. I think it might have been there, but I just didn't have the gas for it. So I was trying to hit all of my numbers that I had already in training for multi-ply meets in single-ply. Because I'm like, if I'm asking my body to do the same thing, then I'm asking my body to do the same thing. And we did that for a couple weeks and that just didn't work. Like I was just fucking smashed. Even like speed pulls in single-ply bottoms, like I'm like, I just didn't have the snap out of the bottom like I normally would unless I really gave it, right? And so I only had so many. So instead of doing 10 doubles, I would do 7 or 8 singles.
Do you think some of this could be because it was a fast turnaround from one meet to the other?
Well, that's I think that's part of it. And because I had just started working with Overkill too, I was like, I felt a little bit of responsibility to like get up and go and like fucking do the thing. And so I wanted my training to reflect that. So I was pushing. And then, you go home after and you're like, man, I'm 8 weeks out and I feel how I usually feel when I'm 3 weeks out, like body wise. So I tried to do, like we said before, like I have a camber bar record to a box in multi-ply is 935 or 940 or something. And I did a 835 and tried to jump to like 915 and got fucking crushed. Like didn't come off the box. And I very rarely will miss a squat that way. So then you start second guessing everything and you're not sure and whatever. So, but what I figured out was multi-ply briefs, like Lou kind of talked about it, right? So it's like the way that we squatted a free squat was so similar to a box squat because there's so much stopping power. And even if you did like a dip, right, it wasn't as much of like, it wasn't stretchy or reactive. It was almost like a pressure release that you would come out from the bottom, right? And so training to a box, a little bit of a release on your hips and then go, you get a lot of brief and all this. Don't get the same support with the single ply, but I found that I could box squat a lower number and free squat basically this like what I would in multiply because of the rebound effect of the gear. So like where, Lou says like to take the stretch reflex out of the box squat, right? When you do that in single ply gear, it like you lose fucking everything. Like it's not even close to what you're feeling when you take the box away. So I had to like kind of, that's my experience anyway. So I had to like convince myself of like, okay, you're fine. This is how, it was.
So when you pull that box out of the speed work, because the box also makes it easier to recover. What did your recoveries become compromised because of that?
I didn't pull it for speed work.
Okay,
I still did that.
Yeah.
I just made an effort to like not go as crazy with it. So if I'm normally doing, if week 1 of my speed wave is 5 plates and a quarter on a cambered bar with 200 and chain, I do 8 triples there, right? And that's like if I'm in multiply. In the single ply stuff, I would do 5 plates for the first 2/3 of the workout, and then the last third I would do with my actual weights. And that seemed to carry over. It was like just enough of a push. I do also think that there's something like to get little woo-woo. Like there is something to be said of just like, no matter how your training goes, like going and just doing it. Like sometimes it's just, I mean, how many great training cycles did you have that you went and shit down your leg, and how many fucked up ones?
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like you go into a meet thinking, I had one in Cincinnati years ago. I did like, all my training was insane. Like, you know, 6 plates, double blue band, you know, all of that.
I know exactly where this is going.
You know, like everything was nuts. And then, you know, Lou's like, you're going to squat a world record on your second attempt, da-da-da-da-da. Like, it was like 11:55. My best squat at the time was 10:70 or something like that. He's like, you're gonna go 10:40 and we're just gonna jump to it and fucking whatever. I bombed out with 10:40.
Yeah, it's like Caddyshack, man.
I never got. Yeah, I was like, I never got an up command.
Yeah.
I just got crushed. And so you never really know until you get there. And I think that that's part of like the whole thing. That really was that mutil-ply meet, that WPO meet. I'm extremely proud of that, of what I was able to do there with everything that went on with me. That was probably my most favorite meet prep that I've ever done, because I had so much shit going on outside. You know, my dog died suddenly, like just, and that really fucked me up. And then it was a second one in a year and a half that we had to put down. It was terrible. And so, and then 2 weeks later, I fucking break my elbow or whatever and tear the tricep a little bit. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do the meet. The plan was I was going to go and just like, first time free squatting on a straight bar, I was going to be at the meet. And if I had to, like, I was like doing all these weird things. Like if I grab the bar this way with this hand, I think I could like one finger it on this hand and I could still squat like a G. And then if I put on so-and-so's bench shirt, I could probably touch a plate and just bench a plate and then pull, I can pull 640 hook grip. So I can still put together a total. And I just like continued going forward with my training. And what I found was, I have gotten so far away from the West Side protocol of like max effort variation stuff that I think I got kind of lost in the weeds of being too specific with my training, even inside of the realm of Conjugate. So it was like, we're cambered bar box squatting with chains, or we're safety squat bar with no hands, or we're free squatting. And our deadlifts are either a block pull, a rack pull, or speed pulls. And our bench presses are either a 3-board, a reverse band, a floor press, or bench, or shirted bench. And all of a sudden I'm looking at this stuff now and I'm like, I can't fucking do that. Like all of that stuff I can't do because of my arm. I was in one of those like things that
so I was gonna say, how did you navigate the training for that?
So I had one of those
immobilizers.
And I was like, they tell you to wear it all day and then you get in your car. The lady handed it to me and I was like, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not gonna put that on right now. I'm just gonna take it off when I get in the car. So like, what do I have to do with it? I'll wear it when I'm training. And I basically wore it so that I wouldn't do something stupid like grab the bar and freak out or whatever. So I started with, for deadlift stuff, I did like a Zercher harness. And what I did was I set up where like my hips would be in a deadlift.
Now, did you have surgery on the tricep, or was it just immobilized? All right.
No, and just with how healthcare is, it was taking so long to like find out what was going on that I was like, I gotta train. I'm not just gonna not fucking train. That's crazy. So actually, Seth Albersworth was really helpful. He was the one. I sent him a video of me being like, it hurts here when I do this. Is that like some weird thing? He's like, you have an avulsion fracture, go get it x-rayed. So I did. But I started with a Zercher off pins and we doubled the minis like under the rack. And I did like week 1 was like sets of 5, like up to a heavy set of 5. And I set it up like raw, no briefs. And I would put my hips about where they would be when I was pulling. And then the following week I did triples there, up to a heavy triple or double, I think. And then by the 3rd week, I was like, okay, I think my arm's good enough to get on a cambered bar. So I got on a cambered bar and I started doing good mornings. Now, I haven't done a true good morning workout since I was at Westside. And my best was like, I think I did I think I did 500 for 2 or something like that. Like,
So you started with that? You didn't start with 5s, or your best ever is
best
500?
ever,
Okay,
yeah. So what I did was, the first time we did it, I worked up to a heavy 5, just like hard good mornings, cambered bar, like, you know, and I forget what I got up to. And then the following week I went up to a max triple. I think I did like 525 for 3, which was big for me, especially since, like, you know how quick that strength goes away. Like if you don't do good mornings, like, so for me to be able to do that, I was like, my back is fucking strong. I have no idea what my deadlift is right now. I haven't pulled a speed pull. And then what I started doing with my squat was, it was like, we usually do a 3-week wave and then we free squat. So the 3-week wave ends up being like a microcycle into a free squat. And then each time we free squat, we add a layer of gear, basically. So it works out to like 12 weeks or something. But I had just come around to when I should be free squatting. And so I was talking to Seth about it, and I'm like, what do you think, straight bar? And he's like, well, use a bow bar. And I'm like, I'm not going to put on my gear and squat in a bow bar. To me, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to do something else. So then I did like a no hands safety squat bar, I think, plus blue bands to a max single instead. Like, just did a max effort. I had no idea what I was going to get. I just worked up, I think I did like 700 or something like that. I don't quite remember. But then I started working and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. And then I'm going to do a max effort against a bunch of chains. And then I just replaced like my sort of super anal regimented, this is how I practice for my sport within Conjugate. I replaced it with like, what can I fucking do today? And
now, were those rotations the same, to where like the first week is just getting reacclimated for 5s, then the second was,
I just went, except for the good mornings. I just, like, to me, I was like, I'm supposed to be a professional, right? Like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, I don't know, I walk up to a platform at a meet. I've never touched that platform or that bar before, but I figure it out. So I'm like, you should be able to figure it out. And I think that something that made me a good lifter quickly was that early in my career, I ended up at Westside, and I had no control over what I was doing. I had no say in what we were doing, and I had no fucking idea what was going on. So I just had to, it's like, oh, today we are doing this. Like, okay, I guess I better do that to a single.
Yeah.
So it kind of got me back in that pit bull mentality, and I was hurt at the time too. So, you know, when you kind of like, double down on being like the guy that's hurt. You're like, I'm hurt, like fucking grumpy and mad and all this stuff. And then I had this moment, we were probably like 4 weeks out, where I was passing out too. Like, I'd rack bars, I was passing out, I'm shaking, all this shit. My supplements were all fucked up, and I didn't know what was going on. And I got to this point where I was like, dude, this is fucking stupid. Like, this should be fun. I should love this. I love this. What am I doing? Right? And me doubling down on being the injured guy that's working around something isn't helping anyone. And the sorry for myself shit is whack. So I started saying to my guys, like, that I'm the only one that can decide what hurts me. I just started like yelling it. And I'm like, I'm deciding that this is not hurting me. And like, if I feel like I'm going to pass out, I'm just going to keep walking away from the bar until I don't feel that way. Instead of being like, whoa, like, I'm like, nope, I'm just going to keep going. And I was able to turn it around. I actually benched a all-time reverse band PR 2 weeks out from that meet, or 3 weeks.
How did you navigate the bench work while you were right after this?
So I couldn't, they were like, don't press.
Yeah.
They're like, no pressing. Actually, the Sunday after the meet was the first day that I was cleared to start pressing by the doctors, like, whatever. So, but you know how that is, dude. It's like, we're not going to listen. So I started with, well, it happened on a 3-board. I didn't even know it happened, right? So I missed like 540 raw off a 3-board, and it just like, it died on the board. That never happens to me. I at least get it going. And I'm like, give it to me again. So I take it out, go to press it, and it fell this way and like kind of shifted. And I was like, I was fucking pissed. So I go over, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to dumbbell bench to my death right now. So I just like pick up the hundreds and start going. And like 3 reps in, it starts hurting. I'm like, what the fuck? Go to the bathroom, have like a moment by myself, be like, dude, like, you can't freak out. Like, you have to just, something's going on, but you're fine. So after I did it, the day I did it, I went back in and did 3 sets of 15 with 100-pound dumbbells. So I was like, maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I fucked up that bench, whatever. Then we found out I was actually hurt. So
How did you know that? The next day
it just started. It was a very acute, sharp pain in the tip of my elbow. And then when I would like flex my arm, there were parts of my tricep that just like kind of stayed soft. I'm like, there's something not right here. So for the benching, what I did was I could still like pull. I didn't want to like do like lots of real deep pulling, but I could still do like scap stuff. So I started with just like banded pec flies, rear delts, upper back. Like I usually don't train shoulders or upper back at all on bench day, on my like heavy bench day. But I just started adding that in. So, and like 5 sets of 20 of shit. And I got fucking jacked. Like all of a sudden I was like, what is fucking happening? I got really jacked. My pecs felt really healthy and I've had problems with them. And what I did was I took a reverse blue band, 3 plates, 3 sets of 5. The last 2 sets, then I did 2 more sets with 3 plates and a quarter. And then the next week I came in and I went reverse white band, and I went 3, same thing. Tried to use the same weights. And then the following week after that, I did orange band, so like a fat orange band. And then I think my first real bench. Then after that, what I did was I got into my old single-ply shirt and just like touch and pressed 440 and was like, okay, I can do this meet, dude. We can do this. Like, this is fine. And then I think I did a reverse band to a single and a floor press. Going in, it happened so quick, man. I think I was only like 9 or 10 weeks out when it happened. So I had to figure it out like in a hurry. But it was one of those situations where you kind of just like trust that you know how to train.
How do you navigate your speed work then?
For bench, didn't do it. I would go in and do like a shit ton of like side raises and like rear delts, like just like going insane. And then I also started training lats on both bench days. And I just felt like so fucking solid, my upper back. And like, you know, it's one of those things where you start doing something, it works, you get better, then you stop doing it. Like I have since stopped doing that, but I probably should put it back in. But yeah, I kind of just trained my lats and my upper back a shit ton. And I just like figured it out as I'd go in and kind of, you've talked about it before where it's like, if you're running Conjugate, sometimes you go in, you start to do a max effort. You're like, that ain't going to fucking work. We got to adjust. So truth be told, I had never really felt that feeling. Like I'd just go in and be like, well, it's going to suck and maybe I'll get hurt, but I just do it. Right. This one, it was like, we'd go in, I'd have a plan and be like, all right, we got to like adjust here. You know, I couldn't do, even towards the end when I was feeling better, I couldn't do any extensions, none. Like a 10-pound extension would be like uncomfortable and like just sort of freak me out. What I also did was single arm, and I don't even know if this shit's real or not, but like the whole keep that side strong. So I don't know if it's true, but so I worked up on dumbbells a couple times, just single arm dumbbells, get up to like the 115s, and I'm doing them for sets of 10. So I'm like, I know I'm fucking strong as shit right now. Like I feel good, but it was just like, is that going to transfer over? So it's honestly like I learned more in that prep than I've learned in a prep in a long time. And we've since like added back in some of that more like West Side typical stuff to our training where it's like a little less nerdy. Like I feel like programming in powerlifting now, especially in mutil-ply, because it's really, and Conjugate has both like really blown up in the past couple of years. I feel like more people, it's become this ultra nerdy thing where people like, it really has, right? And I'm here for it. I like nerdy programming, but it's become this thing where it's like, yeah, well, I actually rotate the volume on my secondary bench twice a week and it's like, okay, like sometimes just put a band on and fucking bench triples fast.
Well, it sounds like with your max effort work, you kind of became complacent, you know, to a handful of movements.
Yes.
And why not if they're working?
Yeah, because they worked. And I think that, but at the same time, I'd walk away from almost every meet being like, I wish I did better at that. I felt stronger than I was able to show, right? And to me, it felt like a lack of practice in the main sort of lifts, but I think some of it is bringing back the like survive or die mentality, and also some of it is like, I don't know, man, I'm handling fucking big weights. I'm not a really big guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm competing between 255 and 265. Like, I'm not a huge guy, but I'm handling like man-sized weights. So if it gets over on you a little bit, like, and you haven't done Good Morning in 6 months, you're fucked. Like, and so I leaned into being more specific when I think I should have just spread my shit out a little bit more and done a little bit of both. So we've kind of brought back that like smoke them if you got them type shit sometimes, which is kind of scary, but because no one's going to tell. If you look at me, if we're training together and you look at me and you're like, you have like kind of a hard one, or you miss, or you tweak something, you look at me and you say, I'm going to take another one. I say, okay. And you take it and you make it. No one's going to tell you it was a bad idea.
Oh yeah.
But if you miss it, you're an idiot. Right. And so finding that line is really difficult, especially when I'm like responsible for my guys too, because me and my wife have a lot of experience, but the guys in my group, as far as like high level stuff, have very minimal.
Well, in that context, though, a lot of times they missed it because they just mentally weren't in it as they should be.
Right.
So they should take it again because they just
yes,
they didn't have the effort that they actually needed, or
didn't get up enough. We have a lot of introverts in our group. Like there's a couple of them that are very introverted, and it's like, yo, show me the fucking killer, dude. Like, I want to see it. So we have this one kid, Josh. He's going to be a great lifter. He's really gotten a lot better in these past couple of years. I think he's going to be an excellent lifter, but he was getting up for a squat. It was like week 3 box squat we were working up, and Val leaned into me and she's like, don't cue him. Just like get in his ass, like just yell at him, like just get him excited. And so it's like walking up to the bar. I'm like, you know how to do this, motherfucker? Like, show me something. And kind of got up that way. And then he smashed it. And I just think that like sometimes I'm guilty of falling into the like coaching someone to make sure that they're technically sound. And I miss the rah-rah aspect of it. Because to me, I don't need the rah-rah. I'm insane.
Well, if your brain's already there, though, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody's a little different.
Yeah.
Hell, you could be one that you can go over and somebody's got to bring you down.
Absolutely.
So you can focus on the technique.
Yeah.
Where now if their technique is fucking awful,
right?
Then you don't want to do that. Yeah, but there's a balance,
right? Were you like a crazy, like,
oh, yeah.
You like, I've seen videos, like we've obviously never trained together, but like I've seen videos that you were like, had to get taken down a little bit.
Oh hell yeah, in a meet for sure.
Yeah,
because it would be counterproductive.
That's something that I've noticed too. I had the first time I totaled 2,500, we were like in the back, like goofing. Like it was just my best total was 2364, and I was just trying to total 2,400. And I totaled 25 because we were just like, haha, like dick and fart jokes. Had a great time. I was getting married in 2 weeks. I was like, we'll fucking see. Like, who knows? So, but then I had a string of meets that were just kind of, they were consistently 2,400 pound totals, but I'm just better than that. You know what I mean? And my wife brought it up to me. She's like, you do better, like, if you're having fun, like have fun and then like turn it on. So I've started, I know you've talked about it in the past in content before, like when your hands are in the chalk bowl. So what I've done now is hands in the chalk bowl. Like when I'm getting serious, like I give myself from the walk from there to the bar to be anybody that I want. I can be any motherfucker that I want. And then as soon as I put my hand on the bar, it's like time to just execute. Take a big breath and execute, because there's something, I think people love Chuck, right? They want to be this crazy guy. They want the, and obviously great lifter, and it was wonderful, like awesome for the sport to see all that stuff. I think that image has brought a lot of people in. But there's something that's so badass and powerful of just like calmly walking up to the bar and squatting a 4-digit squat and walking away. Yeah. And just being like, no fucking problem, motherfucker.
What took me a long time to figure out was how long I can bring the demon out.
Okay.
Right. So if the demon's the person that's lifting the weight. Okay. Right. Now, if I started, which I used to, like walking into the meet, right, then it's a problem. But then it became, the chalk bowl. Then, you know, the chalk bowl to the bar than when you grab the bar. Because the longer I let it out, the harder it is to recover.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like Louie would call my zippy cards. Like I had fucking 6 zippy cards I could use at a meet or whatever it was. Because it created, if it goes too high, then I'm throwing up.
Right, right.
You know, afterwards, just because of that.
And then you don't have another attempt in you.
I have another attempt.
Yeah.
Right. Or my next training session just became compromised.
Right. Okay.
But it's still at peak level when it needs to be.
Yes.
That's what it took me a while to figure out is I could have it at peak level for, you know, 20 minutes, but I only need it at peak level for like 15 seconds.
Right, right. Yeah, it's hard to kind of like, it's hard to teach someone that too. They kind of have to experience it. And for me, like I think early in my career, I handled weights that I was not ready to handle. I was squatting 1075 at 42. Like I was probably like a 980 squatter. I was just insane and like didn't care what happened to me. And then you get into this situation where it's like, oh, I have to duplicate that. Like I have to do that again and again and again and again. You know what I mean? It's like if you want to squat 1150, you're going to have to squat 1075 on the way there. Like you don't get to just skip things. You know what I mean? So figuring out how to put that much at like put everything into it. It's like the last deadlift warm up before you go on the platform. You got to give it enough or it's going to be hard, but you don't want to blow your load because you still have to deadlift.
Yeah.
So actually at this last meet, I took my opener, and you know, we took the second, and after I broke the world record, whatever, come out, gear check, hug my wife, lose my fucking mind. Of course, my whole, half my gym was there, my family was there. It was awesome. It was a great experience. It was awesome. But then it's like, my buddy looks at me, he's like, what do you want for a third? It's like, dude, I have nothing more for the squat today. And it's like, I just got so up for that.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even get it out of the rack when we did it in training. So, and I just blasted it. So like, yeah, I could probably take a 20, 25 pound jump. At what cost? And I also felt like it was one of those things where I'd been having like high adductor pain and a little bit of knee stuff. And I'm just like, man, if you break a world record and your body feels weird and you get greedy and try to put 30 pounds on it or 25 pounds on it and blow your shit off, that's not a fun story to tell. You know, that's not one that you want. So I just cut it there. But I think part of it was because I like got so up for that one, I needed to make, because that was what this was about.
Yeah, I think we should clarify when you're that far up and you're still focused when you're going through the lift to make sure you're in the right position.
Yes.
Right. So there's people will misunderstand that.
Yeah, it's not just like fuck it. Yeah.
I know, this is it's an acquired mental skill though too. You know, I don't know which comes first. You know, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
I don't know with that, but you got to be on that mental state, but then know exactly where you are tactically, especially in gear as you're going down, because it's not right. You have to adjust. So that state's there. It's probably a more focused state, an aggressed focused state.
Or like the, flow or whatever you want to call it. And it's kind of like, for me, it's like, I can sit there and say like, I don't really care what happens to me physically. Like, you know, we've talked about if I feel very fortunate that I'm still here. So I don't really give a fuck about that. But at the same time, I don't want to get hurt and I don't want to miss this fucking squat.
Well, you don't want to miss the squat more than anything else.
So it's like, it's like, I can go up there with a fuck it mentality. Like, let's swing. But that doesn't mean that I just go up there and fucking try to muscle through it. Like I tell people when they first get into gear and they're coming from raw stuff, right? With the raw stuff, you're handling weights that are within your capacity for your body to handle. We are not. I cannot squat 1074 without gear on. Whatever, like it's just the facts, right? So if you miss something on a technical thing, you know, you see it all the time. Someone gets in a bench shirt, they miss something on a technical thing. You're going to have them do it again and they go crazy. And it's like, no. Like you can do that in raw because the extra adrenaline might help you lock that out, but it's not going to help you touch in a bench shirt. No. It's going to make you fuck up. So it's hard to teach people that line on like when to pull the trigger and be crazy. And what you do with that. Recently in like as I've gotten a little older and everything, like it's been more afterwards that I feel the crazy, like after the lift, and it's not like an explosion of aggression. It's like more so I feel just like insane that like I was just able to do that. I'm just like, I just really have a lot of like gratitude that I was able to do it.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of that is, it is there. while you're doing the lift, it's just focused, right?
Put a leash on it.
Yeah, then the leash comes off after you make it.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard to teach kids that, especially people who are young and learning gear, and they see the big weights and they want to do the big weights, and they see that, like, you know, most of us at a high level, whether raw gear or not, you're kind of tapped, you know? And so someone coming into it, they want to emulate that. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't get to, like, you're never going to look cool if your lifts look like trash and you never lift something cool. You got to learn how to do it first.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
I think that's where the max effort method comes in, though, right?
For sure. And I think it taught me a lot of stuff, and we're definitely going to be, my training with my clients and stuff too is kind of trending more that way now. Right now I was talking to my buddy about this. You know how you go in phases of, like, I know everything about training, I know nothing about training. And it just goes back and forth forever, right? So right now I'm in the, like, I have it figured out. Like, right now, I know that's not going to last for very long. Yeah. But I right now I feel I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to do this. This is how. And, but I think that comes with, like, a ton of experience and having moments where you're like, I have no fucking idea what to do. I'm banging my head against the wall. I have no idea how to get better.
Well, a big part of that is admitting to yourself that you don't know. Right, because you've been around a while, right? There's a lot that never do that, right? And then they're done.
Yeah, well, it's hard, right? Because it's like, if you look at my career early on, I got a lot of kind of looks because I was a new guy at Westside with the big squat, took Greg off the board, all this stuff, right? But I really wasn't a very good lifter yet. I was just kind of figuring it out, and I was kind of wild. And then it took a long time to get into that space where, like, I knew what I was actually doing and knew how to adjust my training. But within that, I had like 3 years of bad total, not bad totals, but, like, I had 3 years of, like, 4 for 9, lots of 4 for 9 days. Lots of 1 for 3s on squats, 1 for 3s on benches. And that was the last 3 years. That was, like, recent. And sticking through it, like you said, they're done, right? Because they can't admit, like, I don't know what to do, or they keep doing the same fucking thing over and over and over. Like, I don't know, you know.
It's an easy trap.
Yeah, you just get stuck in it, and it's like, oh, well, I just have to do what I'm doing better. It's like, no, you have to do something totally different because it's obviously not fucking working for you. And it's like, you know, I don't know, when you were still competing, it's like, you know, you see the same guys, the same crews and the same guys, the same meets all the time. And there's, like, the guys that you see, like, that guy's going to go 1 for 3 on squats and bomb on bench every fucking time. And it's going to be the same number. You're going to hear the same speech. You're going to hear the same thing. He's not going to be able to touch. He's going to go up. He's not going to be able to touch. He's going to dump it. He's going to dump the third one. Like, and you watch him, and it's just like, stop doing, like, take a minute and be honest with yourself. Take the reverse band off. Like, lower your box, whatever you have to do. Yeah. I was having a really hard time. I had squatted 1100 and I was having a hard time duplicating that. And I had some, like, really massive box squats, big ones. And I was having a hard time replicating. I did 855 plus 200 and chain for 2. I did 905 plus 200 and chain for 1 to a box, just briefs. Went to the meet. I think I squatted like 1040 or something, missed my other 2. I was getting ready for another meet, and Dave walks in one day and he's just like, we're going to take your box down 2 inches. I'm like, fuck my life. So all of a sudden it went from 855 for 2 with 200 and chain and 905 with 200 and chain for 1 to 735 and 160 and chain for a hard double. And I'm sitting there like, fuck my life, dude. Like, how am I going to squat anything off of this? Went to the meet, squatted 1110, right? And then that just became my box squat. So that was in 2020, end of 2020. I just, for that WPO prep, beat that 855 for 2. I did 860 and 200 and chain. It took me fucking 3 years because of the 2 inches off of the box. It took me 3 years to get back. And all I did was, you take an ego hit, right? So it's like, okay, well, now I'm 735 and 160 and chain. That's what I squat to a box now. So the next time I do this, it's got to be 740 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just build it that way. And ultimately what happens, and then off of that, I squat 1107. First time I've squatted 11 in however many years. Ultimately what happens is you've built the bottom end of your squat. So now I've taken those 3 years of kind of sloppy squatting, built the shit out of my bottom of my squat, and now I can start building the top end of my squat to go into the 11s. But it's like it's been a multi-year thing that I think a lot of people just stop because they can't figure it out, or it's too hard, or their ego can't handle it, or whatever. And to me, it's like, I'm not stopping, but not because I'm tougher or better than anyone. I'm not stopping because like, I don't know anything else but this. This is all I want to do. So I don't really give a fuck if I box squat the same thing for the rest of my life. I'm going to do it, you know? And I think because of that, that's why I've been able to like see some progress, because I had a big dip, and now it's like, now I'm knocking back on the door of going into the 2500s again, which I haven't done in years, but it's there. I just have to do it, and you got to stick around for long enough. You know, it's like, what's that thing? It's like you put enough monkeys in a room with keyboards, they're going to put out Shakespeare at some point. And it's like, if you quit, you're never going to get there. So I just continued showing up and was willing to change my thing. And also just to like kind of cap that off about that meet prep really meant a lot to me. It was one of those ones that just, I'm sure you have ones that stick out to you, really stick out. And my fucking guys that I train with just like never let me do anything other than like everything I possibly could. They were like so supportive and like never treated me different, never babied me, never nothing. Like they were always just like, yep, you can do this. Yep, you can do this. I was getting ready to take my last squat, like speed type of stuff going in. And I looked at them and I was like, hey, remember when I thought about pulling out of this meet? And all of them just go, nope. And it's like, I couldn't have done it without them. And it was really fucking sick. So I'm excited for the ones moving forward too. It's just now I feel like I have right now in this moment, I have a very good grasp on training. So hopefully I can carry that into the fall.
So when you were training for this last single-ply meet and you're getting beat up, you know, because of the single-ply gear, how did you manage the recovery between sessions at that point? Because that's at 8 weeks out instead of 3 weeks out, from what you said.
Yeah. So
that's tricky, right? That's why I'm pointing it out, because 3 weeks out, that's normal.
Right.
8 weeks,
It's like there? 3 weeks out, you have the option of just like, I don't know,
pulling shit right in.
Yeah. Taking shit out or adding milligrams in, right? With this one, it was like I doubled down on all of my recovery stuff in the like I go into my gym in the morning. I got PT clients and shit, so I would take 35 minutes. I do it anyway, but I would like be like rigid. I'm not just like laying on a foam roller. Like I would go in and I would do all of my hip stuff, all of my low back protocol, all of my shoulder stuff.
With more intent.
Yeah, like put my phone on the other side, fucking do it. Not just like scroll through Instagram while I'm rolling on a lacrosse ball. That was one. And then just like food in general. That's why I got a little bigger than I wanted to really. But my wife really got on me about like eating more. Sleep is kind of a shit show for me. I'm terrible at that. I'm bad at it. I need to get better. I'm just terrible. I have no excuse. But I think the biggest thing was like not overdoing, because I'd have those moments where it was like, if I had the big lift and I felt good, I would do like one accessory maybe and then reverse hypers, or it would be stuff like goblet squats with a 35-pound kettlebell for sets of 15. It's like moving, but not really, like not killing myself. And then I do lunges. I lunge every morning. And I think that had a huge role in it too. Because I was having problems with my hips and my groin, right? So what I started doing, instead of taking like direct steps in front of me, I took like really wide steps with my lunges and really put it into my hip, really stretched my groin out. And that seemed to help quite a bit. It was like 8 weeks out, you look at it and you're like, I've got time to recover, but this is only going to get worse. Like you got time, but it's like, it's just going to get worse. I also didn't pull many heavy deadlifts. I only pulled, I think I pulled 2 heavy deadlifts that whole, like in the 8 or 10 weeks going into the single-ply meet. Because I was like, that's not what this meet is about. It's about the squat. And B, it's like if my box squat's strong, my my deadlift will be strong. So I knew that I could pull in the 700 range, 40 pounds on either side of it. So I just said, fuck it, and didn't pull as many heavy deadlifts. I did get into a bench shirt every other week instead of every 4.
Well, you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, trying to figure it out. And then on those other days, it wasn't as much of a max effort or a heavy. I would work up to something kind of moderate, or I would do doubles into foam. So I kind of like the cycle before, I added in more max effort work for my squat. And then this one, I kind of took stuff away from the bench because my raw bench took a little bit of a hit, because I'm in the gear more. Mm-hmm. And that sucks because we all have, like, no matter what we say as geared lifters, we want a big raw bench just because that's the one that everyone asks about. Mm-hmm. But I was just like, I don't really give a fuck what my raw bench is right now. I just want to get good in this shirt. I just want to do stuff in this shirt. So I kind of like went almost like the Metal Militia style type thing where it was like I'm in a shirt and then it's like a deload, like reps sort of, but it wouldn't be just a straight bar. It would be like whatever my guys were doing. Yeah. So if my guys are doing a reverse band, I'm going to do a double instead of doing a max effort single or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I also kind of like cherry picked some stuff that I had old records for that I could go and just like get a quick 5-pound PR, fuck it, I'm out, and then just do a bunch of accessories. Mm-hmm. I tried to really focus on this meet. I tried to focus on like a ton of upper back. Because of my picks and because of the bench shirt. I was like, I'm going to get less out of this shirt because it's a single ply. And I know that single ply shirts have a tendency to die at the top. That's where I miss benches. I want to make sure I have my upper back where I can like squeeze and finish those. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the biggest thing that changed my bench was I decided to become more coachable about my bench because I've been like resistant about changing how I bench. Mm-hmm. And
what did you change?
So I'm a head lifter when I'm trying to touch. And then
explain that.
So like, when any video you see of someone explaining how to bench, they always go like this. Mm-hmm. Well, I would do that in a bench shirt because the pressure would get to me, right? And I'm trying to figure out, my shoulder would hurt. I'm trying to figure out, and I would always have a lot of shoulder pain. And so my wife, who's an incredible bencher, she was like, dude, like, you need to just stay up in the bottom. You need to keep your fucking head down. And that last inch of like trying to touch, you need to stay pushed up to it the whole time. Mm-hmm. And normally I would say, when she would say that to me, like, I know, yeah, well, I don't have a big arch, so fucking whatever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And on this one, I was just like, yes. Like, I was like, you're right, absolutely, 100%. I just like, and she would just, like, I had them cue me a little differently. So instead of like belly up, it was like push through your heels. And that made a big difference for me because what would happen was I'd be bringing a bar down and you'd get to like maybe a half board. And then what happens is my head would come up a little bit and then the bar comes down, but it sinks into like the divot of like where your pecs are and your belly's in front of it. So you're chasing the touch. And so she would just be yelling like heels, heels, heels. And I would stay up to it. And then right before I would touch, she would tell me to drift. And I would just drift forward just a little bit and then press and throw it back. Mm-hmm. And that changed everything for me. Instead of just trying to like take it out and bring it straight down. Because I think what happens a lot of times, there's actually over at Doghouse last night and they were benching a shirt. I was talking to a guy about this. So you're bringing it down. You hear somebody say like drift towards your belly. A lot of times what happens is people will go like that, mm-hmm. right? And then it's like, how the fuck are you going to press from there? Yeah. You got to get like back under it. So it's not so much of a it's not so much as like towards your belly this way. It's more like it's like a sliding, like, Coker used to say, slide your elbows, or you just kind of like float it forward and touching that way instead of thinking down. I'm trying to like, if my belly's like this, instead of touching like this, I'm touching like this. Mm-hmm. So it made it a little bit easier to get a touch in. And then the bar path, because of that, is better on the press. Because what would happen to me in the past was I'd have a hard time touching, and I don't care. I'll sit with a bench in the bottom forever. Mm-hmm. I'm not a person who says take it. I just like sit there. I'd finally touch, but by that time it's like my elbows are 4 inches behind the fucking bar. Yeah. And if I do get under it, I have to press it straight like I'm a super heavyweight, and then I can't finish. Mm-hmm. So changing my whole bench setup with how I approached touching, I think made a huge fucking difference. Obviously the gear is the overkill gear I felt like is the best gear I've ever put on. But I think also like becoming coachable, more coachable in my bench changed a lot for it.
I think sometimes too, if somebody's head comes up, their rib cage collapses a little bit.
Yeah, you end up doing one of these, and then it's like, I think a lot of times too, because the older era bench shirts, they just weren't as aggressive, or they were crazy aggressive like a denim, and guys are just doing whatever the fuck they could to touch and press, right?
Yeah.
And if you have really strong shoulders, you can get away with that. I mean, you've how many guys have you seen lift their head and fucking touch and then press it and they look fine?
Yeah.
And it's like, how are their shoulders doing 10 years from now? Could they do that? Do they have an actual big bench? And then the other thing that we worked on too, I almost forgot about this, was like the tuck cue. I hate that cue because I think that people don't understand what it means. So like when you say tuck, you don't mean this. This is the worst position you could be in, right?
It's an extension.
Like, how are you going to press anything from here? But if you're tucking around this way, and it's kind of like, you kind of almost bring your elbows forward and around you instead of just in like a T-Rex, that makes sense to me, and that helps your elbows stay under the bar. So we started using like the tuck command a little bit, because people hear tuck, 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 and then all of a sudden you're in the bottom like a T-Rex, and that's how people break their fucking arm or don't press anything. So the tuck command, or the tuck cue, helped quite a bit as well. Just like, it's like ever so slight, right towards the bottom. It's like tuck a little, drift forward, press. I had a much easier time with my bench press, but it was like a whole ego like death.
Yeah. So when do you foresee your next meet? In the fall?
Yeah. WPO, whenever that is. I might do a bench only in between.
So then how are you laying your training out now until then? Because now you kind of be in off season, right? And you just learned all this shit from these last two meets.
So
how are you going to do this?
Calling me out.
Yeah.
So, so basically, usually I take a full week off after the meet. The one time that I didn't, I fucked up my shoulder and that had like nerve stuff, but for whatever reason, I wanted to do that again this time, and get right back into training. So, the Friday after the meet, I did Mars bar, raw squat, just a plate, 4 sets of 25. My thought process is, we all want to train after a meet, right? It's one of two things. You either want to, you're either super motivated because you had a shit meet, right? Or you're looking towards the next one and you're motivated that way because you're like, oh, I left 5 pounds on this, 10 pounds, and then all of a sudden I'm doing that. We all want to train, but we're coming off of a peak. So it's the most dangerous time. Yeah. How many motherfuckers you see get hurt the Monday after a meet? You know what I mean? So my thought is high rep, like super high rep. Like that's not even hypertrophy. It's like conditioning, you know? Super high rep gets me moving, lets me scratch the itch, but it's not going to fuck me up, right? So I did like Mars bar, and then I did like, lunges and goblet squats, leg extensions, side lunges, shit like that. And then we went in for my speed bench day. I just like fucked around and did like side raises and nothing really bamboo bar stuff. This Monday, I went in with the idea of let's go and do something that I don't have a real concept of what the number should be. I'm just going to do sets of 5. So we did 4-inch block pull plus 6 chains, conventional, raw. And in my head, I'm like, 2 plates is fine. I'm just going to do like 5 sets of 5 at 2 plates. Well, that Josh kid, he just came off that beat too. He's like a tall, long arm dude. So he's just like ripping 2 plates, and it's like 3 plates, then it's 4 plates, then it's 5 plates. So we both ended up doing 5 plates for sets of 5 or whatever. So there's a little bit more than I wanted to. And then last night I did reverse band for 5s up into a heavy triple. So what I'm going to try to do, if I can keep the leash on it, is not take any singles for probably 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks. I've got a lot of travel coming up, so it lines up perfect where I can't put together a full week of training anyway. And then once all my mutil-ply stuff comes in from Overkill, then I'll start going into like the heavier training, but I'm going to take 4 weeks. I'm also dieting a little bit, which I've never done. So the night before that meet, I was the heaviest I've ever been. It's 269. By the end of the second week, I was back down to 253. It's like 16 pounds or whatever. Started doing Corey Gregory stuff, and I'm going to do that for probably like 6 to 8 weeks. And then bulk back up, start putting the weight back on. Cause I don't want to walk around at 265 in the off season. It's just too much work to eat that much. I have a hard time just like sleeping and all this shit. So it's like, I'm going to take this time to diet a little bit, stay a little lighter. I'll still be able to fuck around with weights in my 80%, 90%, work on form, technique, blah, blah, blah. And I'll hopefully be able to put on some muscle or kill some of the fat and then come back in to like a full 275 with more muscle on me.
And then that first phase, are you going to increase the accessory work?
The early on stuff? Yeah. So probably like lower intensity main movement, higher intensity or higher volume with the accessories. And it's like, it ends up being kind of junk volume because you're just doing a bunch of shit. But the way that I'm looking at it is like, let's experiment with stuff right now that we can kind of utilize later if we like it. So my training is pretty boring, dude. Like I don't really do all the cutesy stuff, really. Like I do a lot of push-ups and that sort of shit. But we're kind of messing around with some different stuff like overhead, extensions and shit like that, where it's like, if I can catch a nasty pump from something in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to utilize it when we get back going. Cause it's so, how you feel flat. Yeah. So anything that feels really good, or I can feel how it would have a direct correlation, we're going to carry it over. All right. So if we put these into blocks, right, this block here, let's go.
Right,
let's
will be kind of like a hypertrophy block, but also experimenting. Yeah. It's like a mild a conditioning block's probably better.
Sure.
Rehab conditioning type block. But you're going to play around with different movements that you'll stick in that second block after that. Correct. That you'll be able to push harder.
Yes.
Right. So,
and that'll lead into like the prep.
And then that will lead into whatever that prep is.
Yeah.
So there's 3 different, because Conjugate, unlike, people don't understand, it is blocked out. Even if it's not blocked out, it's still blocked out.
Trying to explain to people what to do after a meet, like clients, is so difficult because it is a feel-based thing, right? And they want to just go right in. Well, it's like, well, we should be able to just max right back out. It's like, you can't. Like, I mean, you can, but there's an expiration date on that shit. So usually what I have everyone do is take a full week off and do nothing. And then I think it was actually one of your old pieces of content, like no barbells for 2 weeks. We used to do that, and that drove people nuts, but it made people get more creative and do shit they don't like doing. It's like, oh yeah, of course you don't like doing extensions with chains. They're fucking hard. You know what I mean? So now you know that they're hard, so now you add them in. The other thing is just like, if I can do stuff right in that block, and even the secondary one, if I can do stuff where I feel like I'm making gains with the supplementation so low and the body weight so low, I know that when I hit the gas, that I'm going to have a really good result from it. The tough thing with mapping out training for me is I have such a wide group of guys in my group, what they need. So we try to land somewhere in the middle with stuff, and they're all in like kind of different parts of their career. I think for the most part, they just need to train hard for the next 5 or 6 years. And it doesn't really matter what they are, but like, you know how it is. You always want to be like the most optimal. And I think that they represent me almost more than I do, because I'm a coach. And so it's like, I want to make sure they look good and do good and have good progress. So mapping out programming for all of them can be kind of ticky-tacky and tough, but we also don't write down anything until after we're done training for the day. I don't write anything out in front. The only thing that I know for sure for what I do is the last like 5 weeks going into a meet. I have like what I do for that, and I know what that is, and it's really nothing complicated. But then leading up to that, it's like, how do I feel that's what I'm going to do? Yeah. I have like my list of stuff, and now that list has gotten longer because of that other prep. So
if you're not mapping it out, there's still a template that's followed. So what would that template look like?
As far as like when we're like in like regular training? Yeah. So
we'll just start with max effort, lower body.
Yeah. So Mondays, right? So it'll be easier if we go off the squat. So let's go off.
I narrowed my search down to 3 different companies, all made nice equipment, all had nice accessories, but by far and away, Elite FTS had the best customer service. And honestly, the best prices too. There were a few things that I wanted for this facility that weren't already being done by Elite FTS. And when I asked Matt, I said, would you be able to do this? He said, not a problem. I will make any piece you want, any dimension you want, any color we want, even if it's not already in your catalog. So once he said that, was able to follow through on that and give us a very high quality product on time at a price that was better than any of their competitors. It was a no-brainer for me.
Hey guys, real quick, we realized that something ridiculous, like 80% of the people that watch the podcast don't subscribe. So subscribe to the channel and make sure to check out the description for more details on the guest, links to their pages, and give us a few days, but the show notes will be there. Or not the show notes, the timestamps. Hey, we're just rolling with this thing right now.
Squat, right? So week 1, just regular 8x3 box squat. We don't speed pull after we squat. I've dropped that entirely. So we'll go 8x3 week 1, 8x3 week 2, and then week 3 we work up to either a double or a triple, same variation, whatever that is. And then it's a free squat. Okay, so that's your 4 weeks.
Yep.
Coming off of that free squat, you have the heavy deadlift. Almost like how Circa Max was in like the Book of Methods, right? That week that you free squat on the 4th week, quote unquote, you deload your deadlift on Monday. So you just do like lats and hamstrings, getting a bench shirt on Wednesday, free squat. So your bench shirt, you're fresh. You're not beat up from anything on deadlifts. Your bench shirt, you're fresh. You get into your squat suit on Friday. Then on Monday, you pull a big deadlift, full gear, whatever it might be. As far as within those weeks, week 1, I usually pull. Week 1 is a bleed over from the week 4. That Monday. So that's always a heavy deadlift. That bench is usually a deload bench or like something that's hard but not heavy. So like the nightmare situation, a football bar floor press plus chains to a double. It's like, how heavy is that going to get? Not heavy. Yeah. That's going to get hard really fucking fast. So that sort of mitigates how much the weight we handle, right? Then week 2 would be a speed pull, whatever it may be, like off of blocks or on a deficit. Sometimes I'll take a percentage of what we've rack pulled, put a band on it. We'll do sets of 3 with that. And then the bench press will be some sort of max effort. And the max effort's usually like, we only have so many that we use for the bench, right? So it's like 2 board plus chains, football bar plus bands to a 1 board, reverse band, floor press. And then inside of those, there's like some variance, right? You might go 1 board with a football bar with chains instead of bands or whatever. So that's week 2. Then week 3, usually on that deadlift week, or on that deadlift day, we'll do something heavy, but it depends on how everybody's feeling, right? Because we know there's a heavy box squat, right? So that'll be like something conventional, right? So a rack pull, a deficit, something, and we'll work up. If a PR's there, take it. If it's not there, it's just a good stimulus. Bench shirt would be the bench day on that week 3 would be something against bands or a reverse band, because you want to prime them for the bench shirt the following week. Yeah. And then as far as speed bench is concerned, it all lines up basically the same. I like to, the Sunday, we speed bench on Sunday, the Sunday before the Wednesday we're in a shirt, go up in the accommodating resistance and only do doubles. So if you're normally benching against a fucking mini plus a chain, and that sort of gives you like the extra speed. Most people can't handle benching against the fat orange bands. It's just a lot for them, right? But we do that sometimes, and you'll go like 7 doubles, so you feel like really snappy. And then you come off, and on Monday you're deloading and going into a fucking bench shirt on, and you feel good. I will say we've started on that deload deadlift day before the bench. We've started doing some speed pulling on that day, because as much as I want my bench training to be fresh and feel good in training, that's not how it feels in a meet. It always feels like dog shit. So a little bit of fatigue that you can accumulate on that Monday, we use going into it. And then it depends, right?
Yeah.
But what I've started doing with my clients, and not my guys, sometimes with us, but with my clients, they need to get in their bench shirts more frequently. So we'll do 2 bench shirts a month instead of just the 1, and it'll go on week 2.
Okay.
So it's every other. And the sauce there is the first bench shirt workout is either a grip change or a rep change. So it's either like bring your hands in a finger, or we're going to go to a 2 rep max off of a 2 board, or we're going to do just an opener touch and nothing else. Like something that's quick, form work, don't worry about a PR. You're just doing skill
So it keeps the load down.
Yeah, it keeps the load down, and it's a good, like, no pressure. Like, you tell people you're doing a 1RM to a 1 board in a shirt, they're coming in ready to fucking rock. But if you say, we're going pinkies on the rings in a shirt to a 1 board for 2 reps, they're like, fuck, what does that even mean? Like, how do I? So it's skill acquisition at that point, right? And as long as you can recover from it, it's all good. And then, like, the next layer of that is the free squats that we do on the 4th week. I think it's kind of Metal Militia-ish, kind of, I forget the name. What was Rick Hussey's gym again?
Big Iron.
Kind of Big Iron-ish. So first week will be briefs, bare knee. And then the next cycle they come around, they'll go briefs with wraps. Next one, they'll come around and they'll go briefs, suit, bare knee. Next one, they'll come around and they'll go full dick. And what I found is it gives them a lot of confidence. It gives them, when they go briefs, bare knee is scary, but they're not going to handle that big of a weight, right? Then you put knee wraps on. Now they're adding the pressure of the knee wraps. So it's not as scary, but it's another thing you have to think about. There's more stress involved. Then the next one, we're putting on a suit. So now they're dealing with straps, but they're kind of freaked out because their knees are bare. So then they have to, like, kind of manage that stress. And then you put the whole thing on. You're like, okay, now you're fully suited up. Just squat, right? And you can kind of play little games with, like, I'm going to beat my brief with knee wrap in a suit with no wraps. And then they get confidence because they picked a weight with bare knees. When you and I both know the knee wraps aren't saving you from anything.
Yeah.
How many injuries you seen with guys with knee wraps? Every one of them, right?
Yeah.
And so we've done that. And then what I do with my raw guys is a same thing, except it's doubles into singles. So week 1 would be like, let's say you have a wrapped lifter. Week 1 would be, I guess like cycle 1 would be bare knee double to a 1RM. Second one would be bare knee single, then a wrapped knee double, then a wrapped knee single. And that's been really, really helpful with my raw guys, because unless you're an excellent squatter, you're not going to be able to fucking just box squat as a raw guy. You have to be really fucking good. And most of the guys who are great squatters are not box squatters. And when it comes to raw stuff, and vice versa. So you have to kind of figure it out. So what we've been doing with our prep for those guys, and it kind of came to me in like a cloud of smoke. Like I don't know really where I came up with the idea, but we kind of run like an RPE type thing behind the speed wave squats for my raw guys. So they'll do their normal box squat work, right? Like 50%, whatever. And then they'll do 3x8 at like an RPE 7 after, self-wrapped. So they're figuring out their knee wraps. It's giving them, and then the RPE will go up as the speed waves go up. So you've got these 2 waves going at the same time. And it helps with their conditioning, because they can't depend on the gear either to like sit back into. They got to be in better shape than us when it comes to some of this stuff. And a lot of them are more worried about staying in a weight class and all that stuff. So it gives them more practice. And then it also gives them an opportunity to, because we don't deadlift, like raw culture, a lot of it, they want to deadlift a lot and they do reps and all that stuff. And I think it works for a lot of people. We don't deadlift as much, and we definitely don't deadlift off the floor straight weight as much, right? So we still need those box squats to carry over to their deadlift work. So I still need them box squatting. but I can't just have them box squat. So I've done the RPE thing behind, and like, it's not true RPE. A lot of times it's percentage. They say, what does 7 mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, 70%, bro. Like, something you could get easily 3 more with, you know, like just something that's kind of hard. We're going to go up next week. Doesn't really matter, you know? And then the guys who really deeply like, I had one dude who had a very good understanding of RPE. That's all he did before he worked with me. And so for him, it was perfect, and it worked wonderfully, you know, because coming off of those squats, he didn't think percentage. He thought true RPE. What can I handle today? This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's worked out really well. It's given him a lot of confidence, and a lot of my raw guys have done I got a couple, like, you know, high 7, low 8s, and like a middleweight.
What about the accessory work on all these days?
So for those guys on those days, the accessory work gets kicked way down. So I'll take like the top 2 things. Like, if normally it would be like box squat, leg press lunge, goblet squat, leg extension, reverse hyper, we'll take like the leg press out, the lunge out, and we'll cut a couple of sets off of the other stuff because they're getting so much work there. Some of the people can, you know what it's like if you're programmed for someone that you're not standing right there. They're probably only doing 80% of the program anyway. So I give them a little bit more, and I know that. And then if they start saying they can't recover, I'll pull stuff out, because then I know they're doing all of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As soon as they're like, I'm feeling beat down, I'm like, okay, moving forward, no more accessories after your barbell movements. We're just going to do like, you know, leg extensions or leg curls, and then reverse hypers and abs, and you're done. Because they get enough of the work in with the squatting technique. But it's definitely, it wouldn't work for gear guys. It's way too much. But with the raw people, it's been very helpful to give them like, the biggest thing that I found with that is people who are transitioning to wraps. Now they have 3 or 4 sets a week where they self-wrap, so they know where they like it to be. And it helps with conditioning for them, and it helps because they don't want to be there all day, right? So they're going to wrap quicker. They're going to try, but then when I look at them and say, okay, I'm wrapping your knees, how do you like it? They'll be able to say, oh, I like it higher, I like it lower, tighter here, because they've gotten a chance to experiment by themselves without that, like, you obviously don't do any like PT anymore with people, right? Like, you're not personal training people, right? But it's like, remember the first time you put someone in wraps, they're like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's like this big stressful moment. They think they're going to get 100 pounds more on their squat. They don't know what's going on, right? So giving them the time to just be like, you wrap your own knees, take your time, do whatever you want. Here's how you do it, figure it out. And then they have a little bit better of like an understanding when they try to explain to someone else how they want their knees wrapped. Because it's like when you look at someone the first time when they're a bencher, like, how do you want your bencher? They're like, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
And the wraps, I feel like, are the same way.
What about the accessories on the max effort days?
It's pretty typical. I would say the difference between like what I do for my guys and my and like the book of methods style of Conjugate is we train the dog shit out of our pecs. And I know that that's not, and quads too. The thing with quads never made sense to me with like Lou. I know that you wanted yours less, right? Like they intentionally shrunk them. I've never seen a guy with a big squat with small legs. And to me, and I might be wrong with this, I'm not a fucking, you know, I don't have a degree in this sort of thing, but it's like, he always said it was a decelerator, right? So like with sprinters, like the quad would be when their foot hit the ground. And it's a decelerator. Well, what are you doing when you pick the bar out of the hooks? You're decelerating, because if you continue to accelerate, you'd be in outer space, right? So you decelerate to take it out. And then when you're coming out of the bottom, like, what are you doing? Like, you're stopping in the bottom and you're coming up. That's decelerating too when you come to the top. Like, you need quads. And the top half of a squat, even as an equipped guy, you're using your legs and the top of your deadlift. So we train the shit out of our quads. We do a lot of stuff. I don't do as many of the big barbell accessories. So like front squat, bent rows, like that sort of stuff. Like, I don't do a lot of that stuff with my guys. It's more bodybuilding movement type stuff. We do a fuck ton of push-ups and a fuck ton of like dumbbell type stuff. So side raises, rear delts, very straightforward shit. My thought was I used to program when I first started training people online, I would program all the cutesy bootsy stuff. Like, you know, decline JMs with chains and all this shit. And then all it turned into was a fucking nightmare for me as a coach. And I know that the people who aren't asking me how to do it are doing it wrong too. So instead I just say 4x12 skull crushers, and they just do it. And they get just as much out of it. And then it's like, if they start really needing more specific stuff, then we'll fucking change it. But like, I've been known to have, you know, an equipped lifter do a max effort bench, do 8x8 rollbacks, and then do like pec flies and extensions on TRX straps, and then push downs and fucking get out of there. Because I think that stuff, if you give someone something that's easy and they want to train, they're going to make it hard and they're going to get a lot out of it. So if I say to you, you're going to do upper back like sled rows, that's really easy, right? You can just like float through that. But if that's all you get for an accessory, you're going to really work hard to get your upper back really engaged. So we do a lot of stuff with that. And then I'll do like, I'm a huge fan of, for squat accessories, I'm a huge fan of single leg stuff and like goblet squat or elevated heel work, even for my equipped guys. Like a lot of knee forward shit, because not because we want our knees to go forward, we obviously don't. But if they tick forward 2 inches and we fuck up a squat, I want to feel like my knee is used to being in that range of motion, so I have a better chance of not having a catastrophic injury. So we do a ton of like 4x15 elevated heel goblet squats. We do this thing every so often when I get a hair across my ass. We'll do this thing where we all stand on our deadlift platform with our heels on it, and we'll do a 5-minute clock. Quarter squat, like knees biased forward and not out, just biased forward. Quarter squat every 30 seconds, 10 goblet squats, body weight for 5 minutes. And you do it at the end and you're fucking destroyed, right? But you haven't loaded your spine. Your legs have a nasty pump. If you don't get into like the shitting dog position with your low back, now you've had a long isometric with your erectors as well. You're trying to figure out how to load anything other than your quads the whole time. By the end of it, you're like, I don't even want to use my legs to do this. So then you're figuring out how to use your glutes and your low back. You're learning how to load your hamstrings, and you're biasing forward with your knees instead of out. So your adductors are getting in isometric as well. So to me, it looks like a foofy sort of like CrossFit type of movement, but like, I don't know, the proof is in the pudding. All my guys' squats are going through the fucking roof, and none of them have any injuries. So I feel like stuff like that, where like you would get just completely shit on if you had ever done that at West Side. Like, my God, like forget about it. It's almost as bad as having a foam roller. You know what I mean? Like, so, but I think that it's really, really helpful for guys, especially people who are a little earlier in their career, because it gets some muscle, gets them some body awareness. And then by the same token, on the guys on the backside, keeps them healthy and it keeps them in one piece. So
are there other things like that you'll throw in there for other body parts?
Yeah. So the push-up thing is big for me, right? So we have those, this is for my guy. I don't program as much push-up stuff for my clients because I can't watch how they're doing them. But in my group and in my gym, we have those like the perfect push-ups, the ones that rotate. So I'm a huge fan of a superset that's a tricep movement, a push-up movement, and like some sort of external rotation. So we might do V-bar push-downs, 12 of those, 15 perfect push-ups where they're like, you rotate them in at the top. That's the other thing. If I told someone to do that online, they might like just roll their forwards, but we're squeezing our pecs. So 15 there, and then a micro band, like palm up external rotator, right? So it's like kind of prehab rehab. But also you get a stupid pump like all through your shoulder girdle, your pecs and everything. Like 3 times through that, you're smoked. That's something that we really like doing. Another one is like the push-up handles, doing them at different angles. So we'll do like, set up our jump boxes. We have like a 24, an 18, and a 12. Put our feet on the boxes. And as you go down the boxes, the reps go up. So it's like 12 on the highest, 15 on the middle, 20 on the lowest. It's not a shit ton of push-ups, but when you do them all in a row like that, it's fucking brutal, and they're at a different angle. And if you think about it, if your feet are high, right, you're almost doing like an incline, but that range of motion, when you bring it down and you're pushing this way, what does that resemble? You're pushing towards the rack. So for an equipped guy, I think it's really helpful. And it's like, I need your pecs to be strong, not necessarily for when you're in a bench shirt, but in all the times we're not in a bench shirt, so you don't get fucking hurt.
Yeah.
So the push-up thing is really big too, like super high rep. Another one that I'm really big fan of is like either a med ball or like a two board. And you'll go like 10 with one hand on, crossover, 10 with the other hand on, and then 10 diamonds. And it's like, we look like idiots doing this shit. Like, it looks like something you'd see in a commercial gym, but like, it's really helped me keep my pecs in one place, and everybody's bench has been going through the roof too. So those are some of the things that we do for, like, you know, then obviously we do reverse hypers and banded leg curls and all of the standard stuff, push downs and all that. But another thing is, like I had said earlier, we don't train our upper back on our heavy bench day for the most part. But if I have someone get in a bench shirt, if we're in a bench shirt, we'll usually end the session. We don't do many accessories after getting a bench shirt. Like, we just kind of fuck around, maybe some pec flies or whatever. If we end the session with either face pulls or palm up pull aparts, because you just beat the shit out of the front of your body, and we got to get you to sit right back. Because you'll be squatting in 2 days, you got to get under a bar or whatever. So that's another sort of like prehab thing that we've added to it.
So if I'm looking at all your sets and reps combined of everything, 80 to 90% of this is without gear.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm just putting that out there,
Yeah.
right? Because, you know,
Just so people know, yeah.
Just so people know, right? Because they think that it's just and some people do, right? So I get that. Some people just...
And are successful.
Yeah, just wear the gear and that's all they do is that main lift, then they're done. Right? But I don't know how long they're going to last doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think that you don't, what does Hoff say? Results not typical. You can't base your shit off of what the freaks of nature are doing, right? So it's like, I think Coker's a great example of that. That dude I don't know what he's doing now, but he was a fucking freak, man. Like, his arch, like his shape for his benches, it's one of a kind. He's a one of one, right? So for him, and Lou used to point it out, almost his whole workout was on a bench. And he benched 900 at fucking 198. You gonna tell him he's wrong? He's not wrong. But if I did that, my bench would go nowhere. And I know that. So knowing the difference with that, I think, and the guys who are in their gear all the time, I feel like, you know, some of them are very successful. There's tons of guys that are in their gear all the time. The super, super elite guys are generally not in their gear all the time. And if they are, if you talk to them about it, it's very, very calculated. They're not just saying fuck it and putting it on. I mean, I'm sure there are some that are, but most of the guys who do that shit are either freaks or like crazy calculated with what they're doing in their shirt on that day. Like, they might be in their bench shirt, you know, every week, but 2 of those weeks they're floating, no boards, and they're going to like 60%. So yeah, they're in their bench shirt, but like, are they really?
Yeah.
You know, they're just fucking around. Or I know Jimmy Kolb has guys like get into like a slingshot on their secondary day. And if you talk to him about it, he's very methodical about like what that means and what those weights should be. It's not a secondary max day. It's like an assisted rep day. So I think that given the culture of the internet and stuff, we see 30-second videos. And no one wants to give away everything that they're doing for free for the most part. So you see that and then you assume that's what's going on all the time. And it's just fucking not. Like, I'll say it right now, like, whatever you see on my Instagram is not the order that I did it, and I fucking didn't do it this week. You know what I mean? Like, if you saw me post something on Thursday that's a Wednesday, likely that's from 3 weeks ago. It's not what I did today. You know, I got to keep a little bit to myself, especially since we're, you know, I'm competing with guys that we all see it. So, yeah, I think that rule for thee, but not for me type of thing with those guys that get in the gear all the time. We're not in gear a lot at all, you know, and we're kind of pushing more in that direction where we're going to be in gear more because, you know, at Westside, it was like, I mean, you're not touching in a bench shirt, dude. If you're training in the morning, he's not letting you touch. You're going to a one board at most, except for this short period of time where he took all the boards out of the gym, which was really interesting. He got really mad at the boards for some reason. And we go in there to board press. There were no fucking boards.
Okay.
So we had to, I think it was somebody had a big PR on their bench off of a 2-board in a shirt and then went to the meet and didn't do well. And so he was like, fuck this. Like, nope, if you're putting on a bench shirt, you're touching. But that was a short-lived thing. For the most part, we weren't allowed to. So we were very rarely in our gear. And then we were expected to just like put it on and go. Now the gear's gotten so aggressive and people have gotten so fucking good that if you do that, you're not going to be competitive. You have to practice, you know, finding that middle ground is really hard. Obviously, like, look at me, dude. Balance is not one of my strong
it's
suits.
a tough thing to balance though, because the fatigue that you accumulate with that, because the loads are higher. Right.
Yeah.
It makes proceeding training. There's
especially in a bench.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that got to go into mind. It kind of, as you noted earlier, how you lay the weeks out.
Yeah.
You know, and how you lead into it, and then what comes after that.
It's not what you did today or can do today. It's what you do last week and what are you planning on doing in the following week. You know, and I think that, again, it's like drive-through TikTok culture. And I sound like a fucking old guy saying that shit because I think the internet is sick. Like, we would have never met if it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, I love the internet. Like, that's how I've made my bag. But I think that there's more to it than what you see. And if you see someone doing something different from everyone else and they're being successful, there's 3 things that it could be. They figured something out, they're being disingenuous, or they're a freak of nature. And you have to be able to decipher what it is. Like, are they full of shit? Or are they a freak? Or did they just unlock something that now everyone is going to be doing?
Which is probably not. That one's unlikely. Yeah, that one's unlikely.
Which is unlikely. I mean, I think that Jimmy is probably on the cusp of something like that. He's figured something out, especially with like the Bing Bong shirts and the like that. He's figured something out. But I mean, his fucking poly stuff is insane as well. Yeah. That dude's going to be the best at benching regardless. Just the same way, like, if all of the gear changed, Hoff would be doing it ends up being the same fucking people. It's just the numbers might be different. You know,
what are some of the mistakes that you're seeing now with beginners as opposed to a couple of years ago? Let me with Conjugate, right?
Yeah,
because as you said, Conjugate goes through these different iterations.
Yeah. So, well, I think that people, first of all, are being more accepting of it because we had the time frame of like, you know, when a bunch of guys got out of gear, a bunch of big Westside guys got out of gear, and Conjugate was fucking stupid or whatever. And we've talked about that before. I think people are more accepting of it now, which is great. I think because of that, the biggest thing, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. It's just this weird trope of person that you've probably run into. They're obsessed with Lou. They're obsessed with Westside. They're obsessed with all of it. And you look at their training and Lou's rolling over in his grave if he fucking saw their training. Because it makes literally no fucking sense. You don't know better. I promise you don't fucking know better, right? So that's the weird thing where it's like, I think that there was a long time where reverse band became like a big thing. Everyone loved a reverse band. That's kind of dissipated. And now it's going against a lot of bands. People are doing, I see with like their squat training specifically. And some people are seeing a lot of good results from that. I think that the mistake with that is it does groove you. No matter what people say. It does fucking groove you. And if you want...
We'll explain that so people know what you're talking about.
So people, like, Louie would get very uppity about that and say like it doesn't groove you against a band because the first time you give it to somebody, they're all over the place. But that's just because they don't know what they're doing.
And well, yeah, I mean, you're handing them out too.
Yeah.
Once it's locked in, I beg to differ.
Right. So to me, the way that to disprove all that is that if you take a bar that's set up against bands and you drop it, it's going to hit the same place 100% of the time. If it's against chains, it's going to go to a different place every single time, right? So there's a lot of times where you'll see us, particularly with a box squat against bands, and I'm guilty of this. I could show you, it's hard to pick up on unless you've seen 1,000 squats. But you look at it and you're like, that movement looks like alien. It doesn't look right. You're sitting back, but also straight down, and you're kind of so straight up because you're pushing into this band and you figured out how to cheat it. Like you've just figured out by no mistake, like it's not a bad thing. It's just people figure out how to be good against it.
It's like it's on rails.
Yes. Yeah. And once you figure that out, it's like you can blast some crazy fucking shit, dude. Like I for a long time, I was very good against bands. I did 7 plates double dime with blue, green, purple in briefs, like at 235 pounds. But it's not because I was an 1,100 pound squatter. It's because I was fucking good against bands because I had figured out how to get super wide and that. So I think that is the one right there. I didn't know what I was going to say for the big mistake. That's the one, too wide. That's the biggest one that I see. If I had to say one thing, too fucking wide. Like, look at this emblem. That is a good looking squat. It makes sense. Yeah. This person could jump. Who is this? Is this modeled after somebody?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay. So whoever this is had a very good setup with their feet, right?
Yeah. You could the ankle, knee.
You could jump from there, right? So, you know, something Hoff said to me, you want to look at an upside down field goal post, not a teepee, right? So what I see is, and it's the kiss of death, okay? Someone's pulling against bands. Let's just say they're pulling against minis. So a big thing was like, if you could pull like whatever it was, like 650 against minis, you could pull 800, right? That was a big thing that Lou would say. And there's some truth to that, I think. But if you're so fucking wide that the bands, like you're only picking up 680 off the ground at most, with your feet that wide, you're not going to be able to break 700 off the floor. It doesn't matter what it is at the top. You're too fucking wide. And then you look at when some of these dudes are sitting on boxes, they're so fucking wide. Their feet are outside their shoulders. They're utilizing too much of the gear to get their hips going. But it's like, no wonder your pick looks like shit because your feet are so fucking wide. The way that you pick the bar is just putting your hips through and then that pops it out of the hooks. It's like a nightmare across the board. Again, I think that people see old footage of Laura or Chuck, who are incredible lifters that are not these people. You know what I mean? And you look at them in the bottom and their shins were not at a fucked up angle. They're just very mobile and they're really wide, right? So they could get, but it's like, the biggest mistake that I see is people are too fucking wide. It's like if you're a 181 and you're 5'4", your fucking feet don't need to be wider than mine. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense. So that's a big one, is like looking at it. It's like range of motion does not dictate difficulty, right? So like I'm better off of a 1 board than I am off of a 2 board, just based on how I'm built, right? I'm better off the floor than I am pulling off of a 4-inch mat, right? So range of motion does not dictate difficulty. So I think what happens is guys go wider because they think that it's a shorter range of motion. And then they can kind of like get bigger numbers because of that. But it's like, if you're so wide that you can't use your legs, it doesn't matter what you can fucking get out of the rack.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, if you're that wide, right? If you're that wide and you combine that with always squatting against bands, okay, so now you have a disproportionate idea of how strong you are. Because yes, it's 1,000 at the top. Great. And I do think top load matters to a point. But it's like, okay, so you're too wide. You're going against a fuck ton of band. It's 1100 at the top. Great. And then in the bottom, it's 950. Great. But your balance is being helped by the bands, because when you're too wide, you lose your balance, right? And then also, you're so wide, you're utilizing your hips more because of the gear, right? So you feel great because it's deloaded in the bottom because of the bands, right? So you're not only getting help with your balance, you're also deloading the part that you're utilizing the most for that lift with that setup, right? Like you're deloading your hips, but you're using your hips the most to get it going. So when you take those bands off, it was 950 in the bottom and 1150 at the top, but you can't squat 800 pounds because in the bottom you're falling over, right? Because your feet are ducked out like this and you have no legs. So it's like, that's a big mistake I see. And then it happens with the deadlift as well, because how easy is it to get your hips through when your feet are, like, it's easy to stand up straight with your hips locked out all the way through when your feet are shoulder width. Now put them out as wide as they go and try to get your hips through. You can't. It's almost impossible. So not only are you fighting the weight, not only are you fighting what you can squeeze your glutes and get them through, but like your literal bone structure is not made. You can't do that. It's like when you see someone that's that wide, it's like, I want you to stand up that wide against a wall facing it and try to get your hips to the wall. It's not happening. So how would you lock out a deadlift? And I think because they see the gains against the bands or the chains or off blocks, whatever, they're like, oh, this is going to carry over. And it's like, well, you got stronger against the bands in that setup, but does that mean that you can pull more off the floor in a meet? Also, longevity. Like, let's talk about it. You're 24. You've never done a hard thing in your fucking life. You want to be doing this in 10 years? You can't squat that wide. You're going to have double hip replacement, dude. It ain't going to fucking happen. Or you're going to blow your shit off. So, I'm guilty of going too wide at times, for sure. But I see people who push it to this, like, extreme level. So it's like almost like the accessibility of gear and information on Conjugate has made it easy for people to go like buck wild with some like really bad habits. And
what about the bench?
As far as bench, I mean, I think that range of motion also dictates that too, where it's like, you know, just because you have a bigger arch doesn't mean you're going to bench more. So I have, like, for me personally, I have a bigger arch if I tuck my feet underneath, right, and pull them way back. But I get no stability, and I end up dumping more because I don't have the stability, so I'm searching, right? So instead, what I do is I get up on my traps, tuck my feet as far back as I can, squeeze my glutes, and wiggle my feet forward until they're flat. So now I have as much arch as I possibly could in that position. I lose probably like a ½ inch of my arch, but I've benched 30 pounds more with my feet out in front of me. So I think that people get obsessed with range of motion. It's the same thing with, like, you see it a lot with small women, like their hands go all the way out. It's like, in what world does a 170-pound female have the same collarbone width as me? Why do we have our hands in the same place? That's crazy, right? So then you end up in a situation where you're way out here and you're trying to bring down a bench shirt, and it's like, that's how you break your fucking arm, you know? Or like, or just can't press anything, or the raw people, like, you blow your pec off or whatever. So it's like, if you look at the really strong raw benchers and take like Krill and who's the like really big black dude that has like a 7 whatever, Julius. So you take those guys out, they're fucking huge, so of course their hands are out. But if you look at the other big benchers, the big raw benchers, it's pinkies on the rings. It's like, that should tell you, you know, it's a lot of tricep, keep their pecs healthy. And then also, if you look at some of the really good equipped lifters, a lot of times their middle finger is on the ring instead of their pointer finger. Whenever it's pointer finger and it's a lightweight, they better have just the right angles, or it ends up in that weird T-Rex thing where they're way out here and they're trying to tuck to touch, and it's just a very you would never do a push-up that wide. So why would you try to bench press that wide? As far as bench training, I don't see anything that's like crazy. It's all, you know, we've all seen the same shit a million times. Yeah. So I look at it as like rotation of exercises. What I see a lot now is like, you know, or not a lot, but the deload conversation. I don't know where you stand with, I think I've heard you say like the deload's built into the system. So like, if you truly get to a point where you're like, I need a deload, I am overtrained, that's 2 weeks before you're back to normal. It's too late. So when people say I wait for a deload until I need one, it's too late or you're being, it's one of two things. You waited too long or you're a pussy.
Yeah.
You either don't need it or you need it and now you need 2 weeks.
So how do you put it in, or how do you define what that is?
Deload to me, a full deload before a meet, you take a week off.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more of like the load management.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, we deload our deadlift, and when we deload our deadlift, that could mean we do nothing, or that could mean we do speed pulls, and instead of doing doubles, we do singles because you can just drop it at the top.
Yeah.
There's no eccentric.
So it's built in.
It's built in. Yeah, we just do it. Like, we don't do it when we need it. We do it, instead of making a deload something that we wait for when we need it, we make a deload something that we do so that we don't need it. So then we can keep our training rolling. Because if you're like, you know, your squat feels fucked up or whatever, and you get overtrained, you're completely overtrained, you're fucked. You can't do any of the 3 lifts. Now you're deloading all of it. So instead, we'll just deload our deadlift here, deload our squat here, deload our bench here. And that way it's like, okay, I'm not going to overtrain my bench. My bench, I took it pretty light this week so I can go harder with my squat, and it's all about CNS fatigue. It's all central, like it's the same thing. But if you rotate those, that when you're deloading them, you should never feel overtrained. And if you start to feel shaky, you can just kind of like back off a little bit, do 2 last sets. Or I've looked at guys in my training group, be like, you're done squatting tonight. And I've had it happen to me before too. You know, it's like the 10-day out floor press. If you take the 10-day out floor press and it's 3 plates and you hear the plates rattling, you're done. Like, there's no point in this. You're not going to PR. You might get hurt. Rack it, do some accessories, go home and eat and sleep for 10 days.
Yep.
I've recently brought back the 10-day out floor press for meets just because, honestly, just because I fucking like it. And it's
it's an indicator, man. It lets you know exactly what's going on.
Do you think that if you PR, you think so, like with the because Lou would say it was like where your shirt basically gives out, right?
Depending on the person, right?
Sure.
A long arm person, probably no.
Sure.
You know,
right. Yeah.
You know, it can be. You know, it's a weird movement because if you're thick, you're touching your chest.
I love that.
You know, so there's a lot of variables with that.
Yeah.
But it's that indicator, you know, there where it's like, oh, this stops now.
Yep.
Right? Because as you lead into a meet, you kind of have an idea, like 21 days on a deadlift or you know, 14 on a squat. So that's an idea, but that's variable.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're hurt or you're fucked up, you know, it moves, you know.
That floor press 10 days out to me is like, because I've hurt myself floor pressing a couple times, and it's one of my bigger, I think, what'd you say? Your best is 525? My best is 520, motherfucker. I missed.
Yeah, well, you benched more in a shirt, so it doesn't matter.
I missed 525 this past cycle. It was the first time I swung at it in years, though. So my floor press, because I got hurt, I had to do the same like rebuild sort of thing. I'm just back in. I've done 500 like four times, I think, and I've done like 515. This last one I blasted 500, went to 525 and missed it right at the top. But I've added that back in because it is a scary movement for me because I've been hurt, and I like having that going into a meet where it's like I can't take my foot off the gas with my prehab stuff or my recovery stuff, because 10 days out I have to do one of the scariest bench movements for me. And it helps me stay locked in instead of kind of having that like, we're just gonna fluff it out and fucking whatever, like it's the last week of training, like fuck it. No, like I have to be dialed still, and it gets me to that sort of that heightened state still that is similar to a bench shirt for me. Where I have to get up for it. And my guys all know that I've gotten fucked up doing that before. So they're up. There's like a little bit of like nervous energy in the room. And I like that when I'm 10 days out. So I've added it in because it's kind of scary. Yeah. And I know that if it's like, if I fuck my tricep up floor pressing, it was going to happen in the meet. So it doesn't fucking matter anyway. Right. And if I can get through that movement, it feels like it's like, okay, we got through prep. You know what I mean? Like we made it. Now we just got to get to the meet from here and, you know, not die in the next 9 days or whatever. Yeah. But I liked adding that back in. It was good.
Were there any topics you wanted to cover I didn't bring up?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to like clarify some stuff. I've said some like borderline, like when we left Westside, I had some really tough feelings with Lou, you know, and I think that people kind of glommed onto that in support of me, where I've allowed people to say some stuff where they weren't even there and they had negative feelings towards Lou because they were defensive of me, which I appreciate. But I'm like super grateful for everything that Lou did for me, even though we didn't get along personally necessarily. It's a very polarizing feeling with him when he passed and all that stuff. And I had a hard time like processing it because it just felt weird. I'm sure you kind of went through a similar thing. I just kind of wanted to clarify that it's like, I'm super grateful for my time at Westside, you know, and I'm super, you know, it propelled my career. It helped propel my business. I learned a shit ton about myself and what type of person I want to be, what type of person I don't want to be. And I hate the way that me and Lou left things. I hate that we never got to, not that he's the type of guy that you could kind of like have that nice moment with, you know what I mean? But I definitely feel like I just want to put that out there that I'm super grateful for my time that I got there and the people that I was able to meet through that situation. I've talked about it a million times. I talk about it on every podcast that I do. Powerlifting has done everything for me, bro. Like, I just am so grateful to be here every time. When I squatted that world record, I like went in the back, had a nice like little cry by myself because it's just means so much to me. And so I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like there's been some situations. There were some comments the last time I was on here that people were saying that like me and Dave were giving Lou shit and talking shit. It's like, no, that's like, we kind of you get a pass to say some of the stuff when you were there, but if you were never there, you don't get to fucking say anything about it. If you never had an Ohio address, to me, you have no right to say anything about Lou or how things went there. And yeah, so we had some.
Well, they don't know.
Yeah, and you can't possibly, right, without being there.
Yeah.
And I hate to sound like, you know, some old salty dude about it, like where it's like, you don't know unless you, but it's the truth, right?
Yes.
And I think that when I left there initially, I had a lot of anger. There was a lot of stuff, personal stuff and social stuff that was weird. But like, man, like I look back on those days being there, like when I was in the morning, when I was at night, and some of the greatest memories I have of training were in that fucking building, you know, and Lou took me in without knowing. Now, granted, it's a self-serving thing for him to take you on, but he's still putting his kind of name on the line by taking somebody in and all that. And he took me on and, you know, that dude at my tryout meet, I squatted 905 and he came up to me and he said, in 3 months, you'll squat 1,000 pounds. I moved out there September 6th. And I think it was December 19th, I squatted 1,000. It's like, fuck, like how you gonna, the guy was a genius, and I hate how it ended, but I said it to my wife before I came on. I was like, I want to make sure that I clarify that, like, yes, do I have negative feelings about shit that went on? Of course. I think everybody who fucking trained there feels that way. But am I super grateful for him? Absolutely. And everything that went on there, I wouldn't change anything because it got me where I am now. Yeah. So I'm super excited. And then, if I could pump my stuff a little bit, that'd be great. Yeah. So obviously, like I have a subscription site. You can reach out to me and I coach people. And
what is the site?
It's a Patreon page. So it's patreon.com/triggerwarningconjugate. I have all the links in my bio, my Instagram. I think people underestimate what it takes to sometimes to be doing this at this level for this long with coaching and stuff. You know what I mean? And it can be a very lonely and isolating feeling being the person who's trying to make a living off of something that people turn into a hobby. I mean, I'm sure that you went through that, where you're just like, you feel like you're on an island, and you've got a very loud majority of people thanking you for everything you do. And then you have a very loud, small sect of people inside of your industry that are telling you you're a loser for trying to make money off of this, or you're this and that. So it's a very lonely feeling, but it's all worth it when you're able to like show people their confidence and help people find their confidence inside of the fitness industry. So, yeah, I've been really pushing to try to just like get my stuff out there, because I think it has value. I feel comfortable saying that now. I don't feel like I'm faking the funk.
Well, how long you been doing it for? You've been doing it for a while.
I've been coaching people for like 7 years probably, and this is my 10th year of competing. And I was coaching hockey before that, so I've coached people forever. And I, you know, when you say something to someone in a conversation, you kind of learn something about yourself when you say it. You're like, oh, I didn't know that about me. I was talking to one of my clients, just like a Gen Pop guy that I train. And I said to him that, you know, my purpose, I feel like on this planet, is to help people find their self-worth and their confidence through the fitness industry, and specifically powerlifting and feeling powerful that way. And so I feel very fortunate that I'm able to do that, because I think I'm fucking really good at my job. So if anybody wants anything from me or needs any help, reach out to me. I put out free information every day. I think that my Instagram, like on trigger warning, like there's so much shit on there. There's hundreds of free workouts, hundreds of free movements, and we're putting articles up on the website now and doing all that stuff. So kind of trying to, like, you paved the way for all this shit, dude, like bringing stuff online. Like, you were one of the first guys that I found. So I've always looked at you and really looked up to what you've been able to do with like this weird sport that people love saying no one gives a shit about it. But like,
there's some, yeah, people do,
you know, like, and the people that do are really passionate, and I'm really lucky to have them here. So with all that being said, man, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's great having you out. We're done.
All right.
I narrowed my search down to 3 different companies, all made nice equipment, all had nice accessories, but by far and away, elitefts had the best customer service. And honestly, the best prices too. There were a few things that I wanted for this facility that weren't already being done by elitefts. And when I asked Matt, I said, would you be able to do this? He said, not a problem. I will make any piece you want, any dimension you want, any color we want, even if it's not already in your catalog. So once he said that, was able to follow through on that and give us a very high quality product on time at a price that was better than any of their competitors. It was a no-brainer for me.
Hey guys, real quick, we realized that something ridiculous, like 80% of the people that watch the podcast don't subscribe. So subscribe to the channel and make sure to check out the description for more details on the guest, you know, links to their pages, and give us a few days, but the show notes will be there. Or not the show notes, the timestamps. Hey, we're just rolling with this thing right now.